Hello, so I'm going to try something a little bit different again. I've got a recording, as before, of me playing a session. I've got Flopzilla open, so I'm not playing live with Flopzilla open. But I did also talk live on the recording, so you're going to hear me talking live as I was thinking and playing. I may occasionally then pause that in order to run some Flopzilla work. And I also have turned down the sound of the screens on the recording so that you don't hear the constant beeping and things that you hear from the PokerStars client. I have also changed the layout so that you can see all screens fully at all times, which does mean there's a bit of dead space over here rather than them being bigger, but it also has the added advantage that you can see them all at all times. So again, let me know, better, worse, indifferent, or if I'm completely wasting my time, please do let me know. Okay, giving this layout a try so that you can see all tables at all times. I'm also trying without the desktop sound and with the microphone sound only to see how that goes. I've got 3 NL50s here. I've got one NL100 or a dollar. Over there. Do not want to be outdrawn on that one, so I do believe that is what he's doing. Either a draw or a bluff. I think his draw is likely to have hit now. That's a very... Okay, just going to recap that one. In all honesty, if I wasn't recording, I would have been probably all in on that by the river. Okay, I'd have raised him, and I'm fairly sure if I run this through Flopzilla that it would have been a bad move. Okay, I'm fairly sure that I would have been in a bad way. Okay, if I run that through Flopzilla, I can probably evidence why. Okay, so I've only got 7 hands on him, so the sample is completely meaningless. So which means we're given the benefit of the doubt. Now, I raise it to 2.2, so my standard open and raise from under the gun. He flat calls, so he's flat calling from the big blind, a reasonably small range. Okay, so if I put my cards in here, I've got king and king. And he is obviously calling with all pocket pairs, all broadways. He's calling with most of the higher suited connectors. He's calling, I would say he's calling with most suited aces as well for such a small opening raise of 2.2, and he's already got 1 invested. And that is still really tight. Okay, he's also calling with some suited gappers. He's probably calling with a few of the highest suited kings and queens. He may be even calling with 10-9 off. He's 3-betting aces. He's 3-betting kings. He's probably 3-betting queens. I think he's 3-betting ace king suited. And that's still tight, I think, for a calling range from the big blind to a 2.2 raise. I think that is a tight player. There's people who will call wider than that. So I'm giving him, I think, the benefit of the doubt. It comes down 4, 5, 6 rainbow. Now, not only does he bet, but he then calls the raise. Okay, so straights and sets, and two pairs and over pairs, and top pairs. I don't think he's probably doing it with the middle pair or pairs smaller than the board. Open-ended straight draws, he's doing that. Open-ended straight draw plus pair, and gut shot plus pair, he's doing that. So that's what I think he's calling with. Calling the check raise, that is. And then it's a 7 of clubs that comes down, and he bets it again. So my equity with kings is now 46%. His range is ahead. He's got lots of sets in there. He's got a set of fours, a set of sevens, a set of fives, a set of sixes in his range. He's got two pairs in his range through 5-6, with 7-6, with 7-8. He's got straight, sorry, with 7-8 in there. I may have misapplied something here as well, because I think 9-8 suited is going to call. 9-8 suited on the flop should still be in his range, and that would give him the straight as well. As would 10-8 suited. Although 10-8 suited is less likely to have made his play on the flop, so that's why that's been ruled out. But yeah, there are a number of hands in his range now that are ahead of the kings, and as you can see, most of the hands that he's making it that far with are beating kings. So would you have laid that down? Should I have laid that down? I'm still not 100% sure, although that is a typical range, typical sort of hands people play. The suited connectors in the middle there and the pocket pairs in the middle there are the type of hands that are calling from the big blind. And you know, if he hasn't got two pair, he's very likely to have the straight. And the actions that he's taken imply greater strength than one pair, which is all I've got is one pair. I know it's the bigger pair than anything on the board, but the actions that he is taking imply two pair or better, and two pair or better seems very, very likely. So maybe that's an example of, again, the pressure of recording and knowing I'm going to talk about it has actually made me fold there, because I know that I would have just got married to those kings if I wasn't recording and talking. I think his draw is likely to have hit now. That's a very annoying fold. is too unlikely that he doesn't either have the straight or two pair on that board. There's so many suited connectors in his range that will have absolutely smacked the two pair or the draw there. Trying to play a slightly tight c-bet strategy. Auto c-betting isn't always the way to go. A bit of a thing of the past. I'm going to try and set fairly tight rules. I'm aiming to c-bet things like middle pair plus, gut shot plus, any pair plus draw. Dry boards that hit my range or miss their range, heads up and in position, or if they're fold to c-bet greater than 60%, I'm willing to increase that. Adding in overcards first, backdoor draws, and then pure bluffs. Wet boards, villains range hitting multi-way and or out of position, fold to c-bet lower than 50%, then I'm aiming to subtract from that range. First of all, subtracting the gut shot, then the pair plus draw, and then the flush draws. That is the c-bet strategy that I'm working on at the moment, and that is my focus for this session. I think it's always important to have an idea in mind, to focus on what it is that you're trying to achieve from this session, not just to click buttons and to take pots. Obviously it's always good, but we are always learning. If we aren't learning, then we'll get behind very, very quickly. So my focus is to discipline myself into a tighter and more defined c-bet strategy. So this is multi-way. I am out of position to the guy in the button. I only have a very weak backdoor draw. The board's paired. It's a no from me. Obviously you can see I'm folding all the junk. Due to the sit out, that's the cut off, so that's going to be 2.5x. This guy seems quite active. Haven't got any post flop stats on him yet though. I think blind v blind, give it a call, and then we couldn't really have flopped any better. Blind v blind. Hopefully he's going to have a little stab at it. He is indeed having a very little stab at it. I'm just going to call that one. Let him stab again. He doesn't. I'm going to increase the size of this pot very slightly. Not too big, as it's unlikely that he does actually have anything, and I would absolutely love it if he's just hit that flush. Because we've just hit the house. And he didn't have the flush, but what he had was the overpair unable to fold the overpair. He'll be cursing. He'll be cursing me now. Just as I would have done if I'd, called with those kings earlier. I'd be cursing the other guy who, uh, to my perspective, sucked out on me, worse hand, before the flop and all that sort of stuff. But actually, it's post flop where the hands play out. It's post flop where those decisions are all made on a number of different streets. Um, so when the information is there telling you to fold that pretty hand, kings, aces, whatever, then it's wise to fold. Usually, the information that you're being given, the signals that people are sending out, are true a lot more often than they are not true. Okay, so just going to have a look at that and see how much he should be cursing me, if at all, for the call. As we've all been there, we all think our aces have a divine right to hold up and to win even by the river when they haven't improved. And, um, you know, they are just a pair. By the river, you've got a pair. So we're going to run that and have a look to see. Now we had ace 9 off, didn't we? But because it was blind v blind, I reasoned, we should probably give it a little call. And see what happens. So we've got ace 9. Spade and diamond. Now, to him, we are now that he aces, of course. But that's not what we knew at the time. We knew that he had a small blind opening range. Now, a small blind opening range that's fairly typical will include all suited aces, most suited kings, probably a queen 4 up, maybe jack 6 up, I mean, lots of these are just steals. That's all they are. They're steals. I think people probably on the small blind, v big blind only steal with any ace. I'm going to go down as low as king 8 again. I think that's pretty standard. 9-8 off is pretty standard. There's nothing in that range that isn't any way a surprise to be in someone's small blind stealing range. So we know now that he had aces and he's been cursing, going, oh, called with ace 9 off, you know, and these aces have the right to hold up. But if that's a fairly typical small blind stealing range when it's folded around to the small blind, ace 9 is the favourite. So the call is fine. Now, obviously, we know everything after the call is fine too, because we know we had the trip 9s. Now, if I do end up putting this video up online, there's going to be a little break now, as I'm going to pause the recording, go and take care of some business, and then come back. Probably be half an hour or so, so I'll be at different tables as well. My jacks are beat there again, disciplined lay down. I'm glad I'm getting action over here. Never mind. It's a really short little session so far. We're $5 up after a tiny amount of hands, a meaningless sample obviously, but every little bit counts. But I've been making quite a few tight folds. So being positive in the old dollar stakes is always good. Again, we're in the cutoff here because of that sit out or empty seat. So that's going to be a 2.5 raise. There it is. This table is going to close itself as soon as that hand's over. We take the blinds again. We are now under the gun, but in middle position really, because you always count that way from the button. We've got the straight draw, so it's a bet based on those factors that I mentioned earlier, and then it's a fold, and then that one will close itself as well. Okay, so this video is slightly different. I wasn't talking on the recording, so I'm just sort of going through it after the fact now. And this was later on, that same day, Sunday session, I believe. And we've got 3 NL50 tables open, quads down here. And we're getting action with our quads, which is always good. Just allowing them to keep betting into us at the moment. Quads out of position, spot on. And he folds in the end. So the fact that he folded that at the end after the weakness I'd shown tells me that I probably, hopefully, didn't leave too much value on it. Because if he's folding at the end there, he clearly didn't have much. There was nothing scary on the board. There was no flushes or straights came out there. So if he'd hit his jack with a decent kicker, I think he would have called. And if he hadn't hit his jack with a decent kicker, he would have folded to a raise anyway. So I think what I was doing there was probably allowing him to bluff with literally air. I suspect he may have had ace king or something like that. But certainly I don't think he had much more than a pair. If you do flop trips, end up with quads, flop quads even, turn quads like we did there, what is the best way to get that maximum value? Do you go signaling that you've hit something by betting and raising? Do you allow them to keep bluffing? I suppose it always depends on the player, but you have to you have to have a sample. You have to know the player well enough. But in that particular instance, we got action from him up until the river when he clearly wasn't going to give any more action. So you have to have a stab by the river, otherwise, you're definitely leaving value at the table. But certainly, if he was not calling that bet on the river, he wasn't calling a raise on the flop either. So I think I'm happy with that one. But again, feel free to tear me apart and rinse me in comments, responses, chat, whatever you like. Open to discussion, always open to discussion. He's got a reasonably wide opening range, especially as a steal from the button. So with my suited connectors, it's a semi re-steal, but there's value if we get called. There's the potential for huge pots with an implied odds hands like that. We've got the open-ended straight draw, so based on the factors that I mentioned earlier on the other session, that's a c-bet, and then we obviously get the fold. So again, taking down a 3-bet pot is always good. Ace 3 there that I folded. If that was ace 5 or ace 4, that's slightly different. For me, ace 5 and ace 4 are the ones that I might re-steal with for similar reasons. So I mentioned earlier, those are the ones that I would put in my sort of semi-bluffing re-steal range with decent enough equity to potentially hit a good implied odds sort of hand. It also means that you're not just always 3-betting for pure value. That old adage, you have to give action to get action. If you're a complete nit, you're not going to get action. Ace 5, ace 4 suited. You've got your wheel, you've got your flush, obviously you've got your ace as well. Could argue putting in the whole of ace 2 to ace 5 for that same reason, but it just seems like there'll be a bit too many bluffs in there, then a bit too loose. You need to find more value at your top end. I don't think don't think all of the whole wheel range sort of should be in there really. I feel like this session was really heavy on pot repairs. So I'm calling, hoping to flop a set, and if I don't, I'm out of there. Hopefully. I'll say that now. I hope I did at the time. Oh no, it's a very small bet actually. Well, I think I called it because of how small it was. Um, and thought he's just trying to take that down with hoping that a C bet will work sort of thing. Um, and it was so small, so I thought I'll call it. There's a very small chance we might end up getting, and then I bluffed at the spades. So I thought he didn't hit those spades, otherwise he would be betting on the turn, and therefore I'm going to bluff at the spades. So that was not a value bet at the end of the day. That was a pure bluff based on the fact that I was fairly confident he didn't have the spades. My actions, i.e. calling, implied I was on a draw. His actions, when that spade did come, and not keeping up his initiative, to me implied that he did not have those spades, and probably also that he didn't have even one really strong spade like the ace or king of spades. So when that fourth spade came on the board, I thought, right, there's my chance to take the pot down, because it's the only way I'm winning that. That is with a bluff. There's no way those fours were going to be any good to me. So bluff at the spades, took it down. Now he's quite an aggressive player, so again the 7-9 seemed like okay. We may end up flopping something, and then he checks to us. He doesn't put in a C bet, so we do. Blind v blind, it all gets a bit silly, I think. We've ended up with a pair, and that's why, because we've got something now, we check it down. We've got some showdown value, so we want to try and reach the showdown. We don't have a huge hand, we don't want to build a huge pot, but if we can get it checked down and just realise that showdown value, then that's fine. Now it turns out he had nothing, so he was happy to check it down too. If we inflate the pot, he's either going to fold, in which case we don't win any more than we would have done anyway, or he starts to think, oh, there's quite a bit more in that pot now, I'll bluff at it, and then we don't know where we're at, we have to fold, because we aren't that strong either. So by checking it down, we just realising our showdown value, and I think that was a key step for me in moving up and improving my game, was when I realised that you win the same amount in those situations, because better hands will call, some of the weakest, worst hands will bluff. So it's sometimes better just to realise your equity, get to showdown. A pair isn't always worth a raise. Just because you've got a made hand, it doesn't mean it's worth a raise. You win the same. If worse hands are only going to fold, then you win the same by reaching the showdown. But you lose more because the better hands are the ones that will then call you or outplay you. You're opening yourself up to opportunities for people to bluff. You're giving people reasons to bluff. So it doesn't make any sense to really get too inflating pots too much.